Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty RoundTable Radio Talk Show.
Happy to have you along, my fellow Americans. Sam Bushman live on your TV, radio, everywhere you are. We're hopefully there. Welcome to the show. I'm Sam Bushman. Hard-hitting news the networks refuse to use, no doubt, starts now. This is the broadcast for September 25th in the year of our Lord 2025. Promoting God, family, and country. Protecting life, liberty, and property. That's who we are. That's what we do. We're truth tellers as we tell the tale of news the networks refuse to use everywhere we go. Welcome to the show. All right, my fellow Americans, great news. Let's just start out simple as could be. Our dear friend Ben Carson joins the Trump administration. There is no one more qualified. Jack Davis, WesternJournal.com with this piece. They say a man who knows how to climb out of poverty. Why? Because he did it himself. Yes. He spent decades working for the betterment of America's people everywhere, right? He was a surgeon. He lived a great life, incredibly intelligent, hardworking. He worked for the banner of America for decades as a surgeon, but now he's joining the Department of Agriculture. He got sworn in, from what I understand. I think it's fantastic news. I think nobody deserves it more than a Ben Carson. You know, I really liked Ben Carson when he was running for president. He's humble. He's kind. He's God-fearing. He doesn't divide people. Oh, if you get on his bad side, he can throw down. But he's more of a gentle soul. He's more of a patient soul. He doesn't really love arguments, rhetoric. He just kind of settles down and provides a collegiate delivery on many things. How well does he understand the Constitution? Better than most, by far, in my humble opinion. His thoughts are very reasoned. His delivery is very humble and kind and respectful. We need a leader like that in the Trump administration. Now, they always talk about, hey, who will be your guy for 2028? I don't know. Some say it'll be Marco Rubio. I don't like that. Number one, I think Marco's too mainstream for me. Second problem with Marco is he's not constitutionally qualified to serve, right? You got to be an American citizen. You got to have all these different requirements. I don't know that he was born a natural-born citizen of the United States. I don't think so. So, who would it be? Donald Trump Jr.? Possibly. Might be a good choice. I'd love to get Donald Jr. back on the show with me. We could talk more about that and talk about the future. I think that Donald Trump Jr. is a very good guy, too. Very intelligent, great guy. They say, well, hey, how about, who else would be the guy? Maybe J.D. Vance. That could be the guy. I'm not really that fond of J.D. Vance. I'm not against him. I don't think he's a bad guy. I just think there might be better candidates, right? How well does J.D. Vance understand the Constitution would be the question. How much does he realize about the founders, about the Federalist Papers, the Anti-Federalist Papers, the debates going into the Constitutional Convention back in the day? Right? I don't know how much Vance knows about that, right? But I know this. We need a good leader for 2028, and we better not, we better not waffle that one, right? We better not blow it. We better realize that we've got to find somebody that's less volatile than Donald Trump. I don't want a president running around going, I hate my enemies. I don't want any good to happen to them. I want it to be horrible for them. Okay, I don't want that for my president. I like a lot of what Donald Trump's done. I'm not the Donald Trump hater guy, and I'm not the Donald Trump always guy either. When you run around saying you hate your enemy, you're against your opponent, you want nothing good to happen to them, I just can't endorse that kind of behavior, that kind of rhetoric. It's not helpful. It's not wise. I don't think you can catch a Ben Carson saying that kind of stuff. In fact, if you listen to Ben Carson's story, he tells when he was a young man and he grew up in the hood and he had no money and he had no father and he was raised by a single mother and he got full of that hate. because that's what society, sadly, in America, especially in poor neighborhoods, teach. That's why we got to get down in the hood. We got to go to the neighborhoods and talk to people and help people realize there's educational opportunities. There's ways out of poverty. There's ways out of this hate, or the circle of hate is what I might call it. There's ways out of that, folks. If you don't believe me, ask a Ben Carson. You say, Sam, you're just a white cracker and you don't know nothing. Fine, you're probably right. I grew up in a decent middle-class family. I had plenty of, I don't want to say plenty of money, but I had plenty of everything that I needed. Clothes, food. I didn't worry about where my next meal came from. And I'm not going to run around and pretend I did. Okay, AOC runs around and pretends that. She acts like she was in poverty. It's a lie. She grew up in a decent household with money. She's not poor from the hood. Now, I know she ended up a barmaid. She ended up as a barmaid. She somehow ended up as, all these different things. And then all of a sudden, wow, now she's contemplating running for the president of the United States and for possibly the Senate. She can't decide which. Usually, just so you know, AOC, if you want some political advice there, I'm an AOC. Self-appointed advisor too, right? And all I'm telling you is with her, hey, you might go for Senate first. Your chances of winning are greater because New York's really liberal, and the likelihood of them putting you in place is greater than the whole nation for sure. A woman has been a senator many times, so your chances are much, much better there. You're young, you've got plenty of time. Hey, usually they pick somebody that was a governor or a senator to be president or vice president. Donald Trump was able to because of his fame and his fortune and his, quote, art of the deal and negotiating and all this kind of stuff, was able to kind of circumvent that. But most people have got to become a senator or a governor to become president. So I'm not really here to help AOC become president. I'm just telling you that's the ladder we've created in America, which is a sad tale because you end up with a bunch of political hacks. You end up with a bunch of people that just want to climb the political ladder, and they want power, they want fame, they want fortune, and they usually end up with all of it if they don't stumble. Kamala stumbled. So far, AOC hasn't had a lot of stumbles. Her trajectory is straight through the roof. The Democrats are seeing to it. They want a new face in the party, and they believe that a pretty girl will do it. Are they going to be right? I don't think we're ready for a female as president, and I certainly don't think we're ready for an extreme liberal like AOC for president. Why do I digress from this? Because look at Ben Carson, folks. Ben Carson now joins the Trump administration. There's no one more qualified, writes Jack Davis. Amen to that. A man who knows how to climb out of poverty. Boy, do we need that, right? How do we know he can climb out of poverty? Because he did it himself. His mother was a great woman. She taught him to read. He basically had that hate in his life. He fell for that spiral of hate at first as a youngster. And then his anger got the best of him. And then when his anger got the best of him, he paused and he went, what am I doing? How can I have this kind of anger, this kind of hatred, this kind of, and he stopped. And he said, no, that's not who I am. That's not who I want to be. And so he changed. He turned to God. He worked hard. He went to school. He prayed, he worked, and he became the American dream. What do they say? Personified? Yeah, a man who knows how to climb out of poverty because he did it. He did it himself, and he spent decades working for the betterment of society. And now he's joining the Department of Agriculture. They say he's a food expert. Well, the guy's a surgeon. He's a doctor. He could focus on nutrition. What a great pick. And I'm just telling you right now, I hope we can get somebody like a Ben Carson. Not an AOC, not a J.D. Vance. I'm hoping we can get somebody like a Ben Carson that could be president or maybe vice president. Maybe you pick a Donald Jr. and Ben Carson. Maybe you pick a Ben Carson and a Judge Andrew Napolitano. Maybe you pick a Judge Roy Moore and a Ben Carson. I mean, there's a lot of options for president, ladies and gentlemen. And I don't think that we ought to be pigeonholed by the Trump train as to who we should pick. And I don't think that we need to wait until 2028 to kind of decide, who do we want? Let's get a gazillion people and see if J.D. Vance, he's the shoe-in. He was the VP. It's now based on the Good Old Boy Network. It's his turn now. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm telling you, we need to reject the partisan nature. We need to reject partisan politics. We need to step back and say we want the best person for the job, bar none. Who's the most qualified, huh? Who should we pick? Anyway, I just want to shout out to Ben Carson and say, good work, brother. You deserve it. You're qualified. I hope you can bring some humility and kindness to the office. And I'm hoping we, the people, can stand together and be the breadbasket of the world. What do you think, huh? I'm Sam Bushman. Liberty Roundtable Live continues in seconds. All right, back with you live, ladies and gentlemen. So a big shout out to our buddy Ben Carson. What a great opportunity he has to be in the Trump administration. I hope he brings a civil, appropriate, healthy dialogue to the table. Bryan Rust of freewaterquentco.com with me. Bryan, welcome back, sir.
Thank you much, Sam. Glad to be with you today.
Let's quickly jump right into our honest money report. Where's gold sitting, sir?
3725.60.
37.25.60. How high has gold been at its height? Do you know?
You're looking at it.
Really?
Kind of these climbs. I mean, we've maybe a titch up a little bit higher than this and so on, but it's right there.
All right, silver.
44.4.
$44.40, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I remember being a little kid about 10 years old or something like that, 11, 12, that range, late 70s. Bryan might be able to nail the time better than I. But I remember gold or silver went up to $44.25 an ounce. And I remember my dad had given me a 1 ounce silver round. And I went and I said, Dad, silver's at $44.25, man. I got to sell. He goes, no, son, I'd hold on to it if I were you. And I decided to sell it, and I sold mine, and then it went way back down. and I was so happy because I sold at the top of the market back in the day, and I was a little kid. And that taught me a lot that, you know what, it's good to do well and to advance yourself, but sometimes you can get too greedy, Bryan.
Yeah, you can, and we encourage people to kind of look at their needs. The reason you have metal is, if you need the money and it's high at this point and you need to sell, then sell. I mean, that's what it's there for, is to fall back on and so on. And obviously through investments, people buy and sell, try to hit that high peak and buy at the bottom, sell at the top. Always that's the grandio, but
buy low, sell high.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, but I think eventually by just climbing that and building that wealth is always something you can fall back on, and it maintain the value, especially of where you are inflated wise. So,
all right, where do we look at copper now? How's copper doing, and rhodium and some of the other metals?
I didn't see copper. Rhodium right now is about $7,425.
Isn't that way the heck up?
Well, it is up from where it was sitting there, kind of that $5,000 range. So it is, $2,500, but it's it's been as high as about $20,000. So it's
okay. So it's up. It's up for recent times, but it's not even close to its high.
Correct.
All right. What about palladium or some of the other metals and stuff?
Palladium's sitting about $1,250 range. Platinum's sitting around $1,509. Platinum's been as high as $2,500. Palladium's been in that same scenario. So they're just a lot harder to refine. So that metal, I mean, it's low compared to where it can be. So there's some potentials in those two other, nickel-based minerals. They withstand heat and burn, don't put off pollutants. So your environmentalists like to have, use that metal because it burns clean, doesn't put pollutants in the air.
Where are we sitting then? We said gold's pretty much at a high. Where's silver? Is it at a high too? Where's silver been at the highest?
We're not yet.
We're not 50, quite there yet, right?
50 mark. Not quite there yet. Right now we're about an 84-to-1 ratio. But
A lot
gold
better
since
than it's
last
been,
week is
right?
up. Yeah, it's a lot better. I mean, gold's up $76 from last week. Silver's up $2 and roughly 10 cents from last week we talked. So yeah, it's starting to climb based on obviously reports and inflation and your true living costs and things for that matter.
I kind of want to make this point right now. People are going, "Oh my gosh, silver and gold are going up and up and up. I better halt and not buy for right now. Let's wait till it comes back down or whatever." I believe that's a mistake, Bryan.
Yeah, I mean, it's if you can put, I tell people, if you can afford to put a little away, it doesn't have to be much. I mean, you can buy a silver dime, a nickel, a quarter, or that, and just keep adding to the portfolio. And yeah, I mean, I think you can still maintain and protect your money, and so it's still definitely got potential.
What you've got to do is just buy a little bit at a time, and then you really need to look at your purchases over time as kind of an average. If I bought a bunch when I was a kid, I got it my first one for like $4.50. Then I sold it at $44.25. That was pretty good. And the point is that if you then buy at 4 and 6 and 10 and 20 and 32 and pretty soon you got a bunch of silver, but then you can kind of average your purchases and say that's really my cost, right?
Yeah, you can average your cost and use it when you need to. I mean, I like to, if you go to the movie or you go out to dinner, you pay X amount of dollars and you don't get that back. But if you put a little of this away and tuck it away, it's still there. It's still usable. It's still something you can trade, has trading value and can maybe help in a hard time where you need it.
All right, what's the best things for people to buy now? What's on the market? What's readily available? What's hard to get? How much, for example, is a silver eagle silver dollar right now? $50?
Yeah, they're pushing up there. They're right there, just under that, just under $50. Silver rounds are going to be somewhere around that $46 range. You can get, usually I'll have buys. Maybe you could get into a silver round for about 45, 50 or 40, dollar over melt. There's sometimes you can get some buys. I have things in the shop. I was down there yesterday, and looking in the cases. Well, we have a lot of coins out in our rotating cases, and we don't have time to pull them all out and keep changing the prices, keep changing. So I've got stuff under melt right now. I was walking. Oh man, those silver dollars right there are under melt. There's more silver in them than I'm selling. So you can find some deals that way as well.
Is there a strategy to it, or is it just you got to constantly watch the market?
Well, I think the people that there's some different avenues. There are people that are just trying to stack or to store metal, and so in that case, they're buying up and just putting some of that stuff away, what they can afford each month. Some people come in looking to maybe if it's sold silver dollars, they're looking to fill their set. Or quarters or dimes or whatever they can, trying to fill maybe a book. And then you have others that are looking to, silver rounds. I've got a client right now that's got 700 different. So he's always looking for that newest or a different one that he doesn't have. And so there's various ways to collect.
So he's kind of saying, I want to basically be as close to spot or real prices as I can, but at the same time, I want to build something that eventually is kind of a collection, giving it a kind of a unique, different value if somebody were to buy the whole thing, right?
Correct. Yeah.
All right. What's the most expensive metal purchase or sale or whatever you want to call it that you've ever done? Is it gold? Is it palladium? What's your biggest deal?
Well, it was the biggest. We purchased a silver dollar, 1804 silver dollar. That was our client bought for $1.85 million, and he eventually sold his collection. He passed away. His wife just sold the collection here a year or two ago to build that hospital in Lehigh, and that coin sold for $5.5 million.
Sounds like he did pretty well there, Bryan. 1.85 to 5, I find it interesting. The mainstream news people want you to believe that all gold's just goofy. It's just for weird collectors or whatever else. But they fail to acknowledge the real value, the real protection that a portfolio has when you strategically buy. And getting a friend in the business, getting somebody who understands, somebody who will help you, somebody who will look after things for you. I mean, that guy couldn't have made that purchase and that sale by himself, right?
Well, that guy had the money to buy it. I mean, it's
Well, that's number one. But number two, how do you find it and know when to strike and know when the iron's hot and know when to sell and know when to, it takes somebody watching those things and kind of keeping an eye on that, right?
Yeah, it really does. In fact, that coin, our country gave it to other countries as a goodwill gift, and most of those don't sell. They just display their gifts in their like the Queen's jewels, and here's her coins or whatever, and they display those. Well, we heard that one was coming available, and we went to the client and said, "You need to buy this coin." And so.
And boy, is his wife happy they did, and so are the people that
Yeah,
where the hospital's getting built, right? I mean, think about taking that money and putting it into a great cause too, right? I mean, it's value beyond the money at that point, right?
Yeah, it was a win all the way around. So it was just a wonderful thing.
All right, I'm in mourning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm in mourning right now, and the reason that I am is because Bryan Rust, our dear friend, has been in the metal business with his family, 3 generations for over 50 years, helping people understand precious metals, helping them understand when to buy, when to hold, how much to buy, why, and they look at your personal situation to figure all that out and put you in a better position every day, a little bit at a time, over time, building tremendous wealth, a hedge against the volatility of the world and more. They're at freewatercoinco.com. But the reason that I'm in mourning, I'll have to tell you after the break. How's that? Bryan Rust with me, ladies and gentlemen. freewatercoinco.com. They're doing a phenomenal job. We got the Honest Money Report, ladies and gentlemen. Silver, $3,725.60. Silver, $44.40. Wow, metals are up. The dollar's down. We better change the economy. Maybe if we return to honest money, we'll have parity, huh? I sure pray for that day. By the way, Donald, when are we going into Fort Knox, buddy? All right, Bryan Rust and Sam continue in seconds. You're watching and listening to Liberty Roundtable Live. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Sam Bushman. I've got Bryan Rust, freewatercoinco.com, with me, doing a phenomenal job. As always, he's been with me for years, and I'm so grateful for their support over at freewatercoinco.com. The reason that I'm in mourning, though, ladies and gentlemen, is this is Bryan Rust's last show with us. We'll explain why in a second. We are still partnering with Free Water Coin Co. because they're phenomenal. They're honest, and just like it's hard to find an honest car mechanic, it's hard to find a honest coin dealer as well. But I've found it in Bryan Rust and team. I've watched them over the years, and I'm confident they are absolutely trustworthy. And that's, in my opinion, the most important. If we're going to talk about honest money, then we need honest people involved, and that's why it's called the Honest Money Report. But anyway, Bryan Rust is going to be replaced by Heath Perkins. And Heath Perkins will be the one to continue for freewatercoinco.com on Liberty Roundtable Live. And Bryan, I want to let you do the honors of explaining why this is your last show.
Well, Sam, it's been a pleasure working with you. Enjoyed it and been able to talk about honest money and continental, our government, our real currency. But I'm leaving. My wife and I are leaving on a church mission. And we will be going out to Nauvoo, Illinois, and working there in the historical sites. Telling people a little bit about our story, about the story of the early saints, and their struggles, and kind of that path that led them to that there in Nauvoo. So that's kind of what we'll be doing.
So just so everybody understands, you and your wife are going to be missionaries for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. You're going to a historical site owned and operated by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and you'll be educating people about the historical realities, why they ended up there, how, the circumstances and the faith of the saints, and really it's kind of a landmark or a stop point on their way as they went from New York, where the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints was restored, all the way to eventually Utah, in the Rocky Mountains, but they lived in Nauvoo and were there for, several years. It was a resting place for them. It was a preparatory place for them. It was a place of comfort and strength. And, what's interesting about it is it started out a swamp. It started out just a horrible malaria-infested, nobody wants to land. And when the Mormons, they were called that back in the day, the Mormons were there, and they were looking for a place to go. The people that were there didn't really want the Mormons in their community. Kind of interesting for a country that was founded upon religious liberty, but I digress. And these people basically were not wanted, and they were kind of shoved around a bit. And then they kind of came up with the idea, let's put the Mormons in the swamp. And the Mormons basically said, all right, if that's what you want, that's what we'll do. And they literally drained the swamp. They were blood, sweat, tears, sickness, everything else that it took. But they drained this swamp, and then they ended up with Nauvoo is the name of the city, which means city beautiful. And this city beautiful then became the envy. It rivaled Chicago at the time. It was going to be bigger than Chicago. It was going to be, anyway, those dreams are on the ash heap of history as we study the narrative. But they built Nauvoo, the city beautiful, and it became right at the bed of the Mississippi River. And at the time, the Mississippi River was traveled as a huge waterway to travel people and goods and everything else up and down the United States. And anyway, great history. And that's really what you're going to be talking about, is that whole historical reality in America, right?
Correct. Yeah. And so, excuse me, but yeah, it's going to be a neat experience, and we'll go out and kind of learn more about the sites. I've been there a couple times. It's a beautiful place, and they build a temple there as well. And they get a lot of, people that come through and want to know more of the history of the early saints and the struggles and went on. And it's fun to see, and they've restored these historic buildings and homes. And so you can go in and tour them, and you can participate in making little bricks or a horseshoe or various things like that, and kind of hands-on some of the activities. And so, yeah, you'll see kind of what went on there and how they kind of built that city in how it was laid out and structured. So, yeah, it's a cool place.
It's the kind of thing, too, ladies and gentlemen, we bring this up on the radio nationally and internationally and on TV, because I want you to really understand the value of things. And when we talk about honest money, we talk about how your fiat currency only has the value. It's the confidence game, right? It only has the value of what we put as confidence in it. If nobody had confidence in the dollar would be worthless because it's backed by nothing. There's no real intrinsic core value there. There's just the hope and the dreams and the confidence we have in government, really. And that's fiat money. And we reject that kind of money. And so did the founding fathers. They had honest money, which was asset-based currency, not debt-based currency. If you look at your Federal Reserve note, it's basically an instrument of debt. You're just passing debt around is all you're doing. Whereas if you look at a constitutional currency, real money, precious metal, dollar, silver, or gold, $20 gold piece, whatever you want to look at, there's intrinsic value there. It took work to get it out of the ground. It took work to find it. It took work to turn it into something that's portable and usable. In other words, it becomes monetized by value. We trade labor, etc., for this valued coin. All right. Well, the same thing's true in honest money in America. You can't have one source of money. In other words, you can't have a monopoly on money. What you need to have is somebody in charge of the weights and measures. In other words, the relationship between gold and silver and how much ounce of silver is going to be worth. And there's got to be somebody that kind of puts an organization to it, right? But there's not one place for money. If Sam Bushman goes out in the hills and he prays to God Almighty, then he might find some gold and come back and say, I've got some gold, and the Lord can prosper us. And there's not one source or a monopoly of money controlled by, in many cases, evil men. So that's why we talk about the Honest Money Report with freewatercoinco.com, because we want you to understand the value of things, the value of money, the value of fake money or the lack thereof, the value of real money. Right now we're talking about, hey, real money. I mean, an ounce of gold, ladies and gentlemen, used to be $20 in America, right? $20 for an ounce of gold. Then later, when things started to slide and we started to play games with money, they pegged it at $35 for an ounce of gold. But traditionally, an ounce of silver was $1, an ounce of gold was $20, right? 20 to 1 ratio. Now I want you to understand that gold is $3,725.60. That's a far cry from a $20 gold piece, isn't it, ladies and gentlemen? But that's what happens when they debase your currency. That's what happens when they have hidden taxation. That's what happens when they have inflation. And silver used to be $1. Now it's $44.40. Just out of this world in terms of its real value, because its value doesn't change much. It's the fake currencies that fluctuate against that incredible value currency. Well, the reason that I wanted to have Bryan on for the last show and talk more about his service and his lovely wife's service as missionaries for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is because I want to talk in the final segment here in just a second after the break. We'll let Bryan rock and roll on this. But I want to talk about real value, right? Real value isn't even money. Real value are things that you can't buy and sell. Real value is your relationship with God, as Charlie Kirk wisely taught. And I hope his teachings continue to go viral, right? I hope to be one who advocates for the same sacred cause as Bryan and his wife are doing. Okay, but real value isn't even found in money. Real value is found in your time spent with loved ones, your time spent in service, your time that you give freely to others. It's all about priorities. You know, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints used to have these public service announcements, radio and TV and everything, and they would end and they would say, isn't it about time? Meaning, isn't it about time to start focusing on this, but also isn't it about your time? Your time is really all that you have to give to others. Everything else comes from God. Even your time on earth comes from God. He can cut it short or leave it long or etc. But I want to talk about, Bryan, the value of choices we make and the blessings that we can bring about by our angel service, by our dedication to sacred causes, by our willingness to live according to certain principles publicly and privately, and most importantly, then how we advocate for those principles in our own lives to those around us. Because that's, in my mind, where the real value and the real lift comes from. When we get back, Bryan Rust can help us break this down. He's decided to give 100% of his time and his wife's time to God. We'll talk about it in seconds. You're watching and listening to Liberty RoundTable Live. Bryan Rust, my dear friend, I wanted to dedicate this show to talking about real value, my friend.
Sorry, Sam, what?
I wanted to talk on this show about real value. It's important to talk about honest money, and I think that has real value compared to fake currency. But I want people to understand there's things beyond money, even if it's real, that are important. Missionary work, dedicating your time, all your time and talents, 24/7, you and your wife to God. That's really unheard of. You're supposed to go to retirement and party, bro. You know? But you're choosing something else, and that's really important. I want people to understand. What drove this decision?
Thanks, Sam. It's yeah. There you go. I think the things that matter most in my life, God being number one, my family, and as you say so well, our country, to help and bless our country. Well, I feel I've been given so much, and I feel as a result of that, at my own expense, I'm gonna take some of my time. I can definitely give back some of my time and go out and share the word of God. And maybe I'm not knocking on your door or so on, but I'm there, and I'll be in a place that we've not lived before, and we'll share our testimonies and express our love to people there and tell them our story. And and part of that is truly giving back and serving and loving those God's children loving God's children. And I think that's so important, especially in a world that we live in today, there's so, Satan and his plan is to destroy and tear us down, but, God's plan is to build us up. And I think that needs to be expressed as well.
Have they given you an indication of exactly? I've been to Nauvoo before, and it's a place that everybody ought to go, whether you're a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints or not. It is a historical opportunity like you haven't seen before. They've got people that perform in plays. They do all these kind of plays explaining how they lived in those days and kind of what the discussions were. And it's kind of a reenactment of some historical realities, but yet it's put to a musical and fun plays where they're singing and dancing and fiddle playing. And it's just pretty cool. It's fun. It's educational. You get to go learn about the history. And, the Mormons were eventually kicked out of the United States, literally by Governor Boggs of Missouri. Hey, you guys have to leave or you'll be shot on sight. Doesn't matter, man, woman, child, don't care, you're gone. And that's a really dark chapter of our history. The black people have had it rough. The Native Americans or Indian people have had it rough. I get it. But nobody's really had it more rough than the members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, nicknamed the Mormons. Nobody's had a rougher time than them. Nobody's been literally given an extermination order to flat out leave. And then while they were leaving in the middle of winter, I kid you not, barefoot, many women and children, pregnant and starving, were forced to leave literally under bayonet and gun. But while that happened, the United States actually came to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, members that were out on the plains fleeing in frozen temperatures, and asked the men to leave and go serve their country and fight the war in Mexico. Or I should say the war with Mexico. I mean, you study this history, Bryan, and you just go, wow. What a bunch of honorable, good people, whether you're a member or not of the church. This chapter in American history is critical for people to understand, and most importantly, to make sure that it never happens to anybody else ever, Bryan.
Yeah, amen, Sam. I mean, that's the if you look into this and learn a little bit about this. A lot of people say, well, I don't want you to convert me, or I don't want to hear about your church or so on. But if you look at the history and just walk through the history of these early saints and what happened to them, what was their story, and they establish, if land was available and they were able to purchase land and they start to build a community. But as the community grew and got larger, it was, the people around them felt like they were threatened, and yet these were good people and so on. But as being threatened, they were, they mobbed the early saints and killed people. They destroyed their shops and ran them out of Missouri and Kirtland, and then finally they're in Nauvoo, and eventually the same kind of thing happens there. So it's quite a story, and you look at the growth and so on now. It's largest growing church in the world. It's dotting the earth, and that was kind of the revelations given, and it's a beautiful story. We will also serve in Carthage jail, where Joseph Smith and Hiram, his brother, were murdered, and by a mob. And so there's a history there as well, and we'll serve in that capacity as well, about the jail and the history there, and kind of what happened. And you can come to the sites. There's various sites where there's blacksmith shops and printing office and the store, the drugstore, and bakery, and the various things that you can 20, 30 places that you can travel in that area in Nauvoo there and see these sites and get on a wagon and see the oxen and anyway, it's an enjoyable thing right there on the Mississippi River. So it's a beautiful place.
And beautiful place is the exact term. I mentioned this at the start of the show, but I'll mention it again. Some people say it means in Hebrew, beautiful place. Others say it means city beautiful. But the term Nauvoo has to do with beauty, and it's fascinating because they took a swamp and they turned it into a beautiful place called Nauvoo. Anyway, it's very interesting. And I tell people, you want to learn about this because it's an incredible chapter in American history. You really got to understand this nation was founded on religious liberty, and then they drove people out because of their religion. Wow. And then, Joseph Smith Jr., the prophet and president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints at the time, was murdered for his faith. He gave his life and sealed his life with his blood and testimony. Not unlike Charlie Kirk. I mean, it's interesting. In the last couple of weeks, we see Charlie Kirk die for his faith. Really, it was his beliefs, it was his teachings that he died for. And Joseph Smith, very similar indeed. So these cycles of history, I'm not of the same religion that Charlie Kirk was. I'm not sure what he was. He grew up as a Protestant. Some say he was going to be converting to Catholic. I don't really know all the internals of that. But I will say that religious liberty is a quest and should be a quest for all Americans. And I'm not here to tell you what to believe or anything else. I'm just here to say, hey, a belief in God is healthy. A belief in God is what our founding fathers left us as an incredible legacy for. And throughout American history, you find people who have literally dedicated their lives to God and to the work of God. And Bryan and his lovely wife are going to do that very thing. When do you guys leave? You drive out there, right?
Yeah, we'll go out probably on the 15th. Is when we'll drive out and load up our car, and it's trying to figure out what we should take, and we'll be gone, for this period of time. And so, just trying to figure all that out. But it's great. It's obviously when we talk of God and family. I mean, that's the hardest thing I think for my wife is we've got 12 grandkids and missing that. But it's an important thing that we go out and be example to our kids, that we can, do hard things, and that we can go out and bless others who we don't know, and we're willing to go and give of our time and excited to go out and serve. So it's going to be a wonderful thing.
Now, I'm going to add, though, speaking of your 12 grandchildren, what an opportunity to take them to Nauvoo and learn about the history and learn about all that has to offer, and then see Grandma and Grandpa at the same time, and probably go on a tour with Grandma and Grandpa. I don't know exactly where you'll be serving. I don't know if you'll be the guy that drives the wagon, or if you'll be the guy that tells the stories, or exactly where you're going to serve yet. We don't know that yet, right?
Yeah, we'll be in various. They'll move us around to the various sites, and that. So probably have an opportunity if we knew when our kids are coming out. We'll be able to schedule that probably. So it'd be great.
If you come at the right time, ladies and gentlemen, you can watch Bryan Rust with his anvil, just slamming that hard metal right into blacksmith. Right. Bryan tearing it up, taking care of business. It's really important to learn about this kind of stuff and to understand how you learn how life was back in the day. You learn what their struggles were, what their fears were. A lot of times when you study the Nauvoo story, you hear some love stories of people and their relationships and the things that they went through together. I mean, it's just tremendous, tremendous stuff. It's kind of like why I tell people to read the Book of Mormon, another testament of Jesus Christ. I say, even if you don't want to be converted to the Mormons, that's fine, but read it because it's the greatest handbook for freedom ever written, Bryan.
Yeah, no doubt about it, Sam. It's great. One of the things that is unique. My dad wrote a book on Utah Mormon coin and currency, and so they made Mormon gold pieces, which were called territorial gold at the time, and then you had Kirtland notes signed by Joseph Smith, and then white notes by Brigham Young. I have a couple of the Nauvoo House Association notes that were issued, and I'll be taking those back there and just showing people that here's some real artifacts of this time period, and you can read about, because they needed to establish some needed money and obviously and so on, and they established these notes that they would take, and land would be offered, and a note would be given. So we have some of those artifacts, which will be fun to give out, and also some little pennies that are made into the Nauvoo temple, and we'll give those away. So it'll be fun.
And I'm not in mourning. I really want to congratulate Bryan and his wife for a wonderful life led of service and love and kindness. I'm just going to be missing our weekly discussions. That's all. But I congratulate him and his lovely wife. And I'm just telling you, it's going to be a wonderful opportunity. This is the last show for Mr. Bryan Rust on Liberty RoundTable Live for a while. He won't be a missionary forever. Well, a lifelong missionary, yes, but he'll be back. But for now, Heath Perkins will be filling in for him while he's gone. So you'll still get your honest money reports. Have no fear. From freewatercoinco.com. Bryan, God bless you and your family, sir.
Thank you, Sam. God bless you as well. Thank you.
You're watching and listening to Liberty Roundtable Live.